This. No, I gave you the prime opportunity that time.
Uh,
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Stale Swinston, Bloody Elbow. Zane Simon, who always interrupts my intro and that time had a free offer to, like a free right here, but he passed on it. Zane Simon, hello.
I can't. It's not supposed to be there because you give it to me. It's supposed to be there because I take it. If you start giving it to me, I'm not going to do it.
That takes all the fun out of it.
Yeah.
Well, we won't make any tangent jokes on that one.
No,
All right.
please don't.
Okay,
God.
good. Thank you. We're all professional here. We're going to talk about Bellator 132 semi-briefly, mostly because, UFC cards are 12 deep nowadays, and those take us about an hour. So this is a pretty decent card, I guess. Overall, your thoughts on the card? It's been a little bit of an absence for Bellator. So
It
now that they're coming back, go ahead, lay it on us.
it's a good top two fight card that if they can dress it up the way that they were able to dress up Bellator 131, it could be a lot more fun. Like this has, I think there's a promise that this will have at least a few action fights on it, and they're maybe trying to build some new faces on it. So it should be fun, but it could be a lot better depending on the production. I think that's kind of where Bellator is right now.
And I have to say, the one extremely noticeable change with the Coker takeover was the Coker takeover. That's kind of snappy. Was the production value very Pride-esque? I thought. Just me, or did you notice it?
Yeah, no, very, very fighter first. Very, make everything special, make every walkout special, make every fighter seem like they're their own little event kind of thing, and it's a lot of fun to watch. I mean, that's kind of the space that they could be filling in the U.S. right now, and something that you see more in promotions like KSW or M1 Global to some extent, but that we don't get that much of in the States.
I think it's a nice marriage because Bellator wasn't doing really any of that. Their production value was no bullshit, fight after fight, like you barely even have time to get up and take a whiz. So between that, the tournament format, and then now Coker adding his same touch that made Strikeforce pretty popular with fans, I think that's going to be a good mixture. Um, First of all, let me buzz down the main card. This is going to take place Friday, January 16th, Pachango Casino Resort in Temecula, California. Top four on the main card, Spike TV, 9 o'clock. Featherweight title bout. This will guaranteed dogfight pretty much. Patricio Freire versus Daniel Straus. Co-main event, Bubba Jenkins versus Georgie Karakanyan. We'll talk about this a little more. We discussed it before we started the show, but they're gonna run Houston Alexander versus Virgil Zwickerback. It's just kind of a head scratcher to me because I thought they could have got away with billing this as it's going to be fun. Who cares about the name value? But the fight didn't really turn out that way. It was quite the opposite. But anyways, I digress. The last fight, or flipping that around, the opener for the main card will be Fernando Gonzalez, who just knocked out Karol Parisian, taking on the white mare, Marius Zaramskis. The preliminary card starts on, it streams on Spike.com, and we also stream that live and free on Bloody Elbow, FYI. There's 3 bouts we're going to talk about on the undercard. 3 out of 1, 2, 3, 3 out of 8 or 9. I can't count that high nor that fast. The first one we're going to talk about is Fabricio Guerrero versus Nick Piedmont. How many is? I can't see all your fingers there.
Seven. That's
Seven.
seven.
7 finners, y'all. Um, I like Guerrero. He was training with Team Alpha Male. I don't know if he still is, but I know that he's tight with Team Alpha Male's jiu-jitsu coach. So he was spending some time training there, and the results definitely showed. I think definitely a legit prospect, really young kid. What are your thoughts on this one?
It's. I think it should be a reasonable step back for Guerrero, who kind of got thrown, in that sort of classic Bellator tournament format, just repeatedly thrown into the deep end over and over again, which, I mean, to their credit, he's been fighting since 2009, so even though he's 24, he's not exactly a young kid in terms of MMA. But, there's the they could use a little time to build him up in the new format where they're only running, one show, maybe two shows a month, every couple of months. They need to be able to build guys and let him showcase a little. And so while he's coming off a win over Shabalayev, I think Piedmont is sort of a stay busy and let him make another pretty win out of it kind of fight.
It's kind of a shine fight for him. And just to
Yeah.
qualify your statement, which is absolutely correct about Guerrero being thrown into the fire or thrown to the wolves, I can't remember which you said, but he debuted against Frodo Kazbalayev,
Yeah.
who, that seems like a guy that got lost in the Bellator shuffle, a really solid fighter. He lost by arm triangle choke, which is a little bit surprising because he's a Guerrero this is a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Um, he picked up one win not in Bellator, and then came back to Bellator and beat Des Green by decision, lost to Patricio Freire, and then beat Shabalat Shamalayev. And actually, being that he was thrown in, I mean, his record is actually not that bad whatsoever.
Yeah, no, I mean, wins over Green and Shamalayev are totally legit, and Kasbulayev and Freire are both really, really good. I mean, especially Patricio has been on a tear lately. I mean, he's back in with, he's the champ again, or the champ. Is he? Was he a champ before, or is this his first time holding the belt?
It's his first
Bellator.
time, I believe.
Okay, he's the champ now. Got his second title shot. Is what I should have said.
He was kind of the de
Um,
facto champ for a while, though, because a lot
yeah,
of people thought he was the best one. He just made it official.
but no, I mean he's done really well for himself, which is why I don't think that Piedmont is going to trouble him here, just because Piedmont's, he's a decent enough aggressive striker, but he doesn't really have a well-rounded game outside of that, and he's somewhat willing to go to the ground and try and take the fight and win it there. And against Guerrero, I don't see that going well. So I think this should be a pretty strong showing for Fabricio.
Guerrero's got a couple of things going for him. The first is not going to be there, but he's a really long and stretchy guy, 5'10", real lanky. Piedmont's
Yeah.
about his same size, so that shouldn't play in. But beyond that, he's got three-dimensional capabilities, and his striking was kind of the last one to really develop into like a legit aspect of his game. His takedowns, he's got a judo background, and that's why I think working with Team Alpha Male was perfect, because now he's got kind of the nice blend of traditional hardcore American wrestling along with his judo skills, and he's a pimp on the ground. I mean, he's super fluid and a solid scrambler, looks for the finish all the time. So this is nothing against Piedmont, because I think that he's a decent pickup, but I think he's going to be heartily outmatched here, and this should be kind of a showcase fight for Guerrero. So anything you want to add before we move to the next one?
No, I mean that's most of it for me. It should be a fun fight just to watch Guerrero and see him do his stuff and probably pick up a submission win.
Yeah, a lot of times I think this is actually a pretty good time for a fight like this, because it's a little bit of a canvas for people to show. Before it was, can Guerrero hang with this guy, or if he can hang, what can he possibly do to compete? And now this is a chance where he's going to be the favorite, and he should be able to show us how far he's come along, and to prove that he's up on the level of the top echelon guys. And I think he's right there right now, where he's right on that verge between the cream of the crop of the division. This is the featherweight division, and kind of the mid-range to the basement guys. So I'm actually going to kind of look forward to that one. Another up-and-comer young guy that I really like, Derek Anderson. He's taking on Danny Navarro. What you think?
Yeah, well, these were two guys who have both also had a lot to prove. They both came out of exceptionally questionable sort of camps and pre-fight or pre-big show experience. Anderson got all of his experience through Explode and through Gladiator Challenge before getting called up to Bellator, and he's even trains under Team Explode, which is loosely affiliated with the organization. maybe not quite directly 1-to-1 if they're to be believed. But he's done decently. I mean, in fact, incredibly well in Bellator, beating Patricky Freire and then knocking out Brandon Gertz. So, he hit a setback against Marcin Held, but that's nothing to be ashamed of. And then Navarro at the same time is kind of coming out of the same situation where he started out real rough early on and has then fought the worst possible competition that he could find. Um, with a lone win over Joshua Avelis being sort of his high point of his career. Um, of the two, Navarro strikes me as the less natural fighter. He has kind of a jangly striking style that seems not terribly functional, and he's also, unlike Anderson, has yet to prove really at all that he uh, can compete at a reasonably high level. And I think Anderson's just bigger and has more of the natural tools that let him be successful, even with perhaps a rough fighting background that hasn't left him terribly polished. So I'm thinking Anderson's going to win this.
I mean, again, no disrespect to Navarro, but when Zane says we got kind of a chuckle about this before the show, his less than stellar competition, we counted his last four opponents, and I believe the overall tally was three out of his last four opponents they were 0-22
Yeah.
cumulatively. That's actually a hard word to say. 0-10, 0-2, and 0-10 again. And I mean, I'm a pretty laid back guy, but that's kind of like some bullshit. You know what I mean? If you're advancing to the big show and you're so many, what did we decide, like 10, 12, 13 fights into your career, and you're fighting guys who have 10 times stepped into the cage and are yet to walk out with a win. So, no offense, but that is not impressive. And on the other side, to me, Derek Anderson's completely legit. I mean, his win over the big pit bull, Patricky, was phenomenal. And actually, I don't know if anyone saw his knockout of Brandon Gertz, but I thought that should have been a knockout of the year candidate because it was one of the most brutal flying knees ever. I mean, the guy's life almost ended when he landed. I mean, it was, as brutal as it gets. So, good boxer, super hard nose, and a pretty decent wrestler as well. His submission grappling, I was going to say defense, but his submission grappling overall is a bit unproven. The only piece of evidence we got was the submission loss to Marcin Held, which, I mean, he's like the modern day Aoki almost. So I like Anderson likely by a beatdown in that one. The final fight we're going to talk about on the prelims is Dustin Jacoby versus John Salter. Take it away.
Yeah, well, Jacoby is kind of, he's one of the somewhat hand-fed opponents that King Mo Lawal has gotten recently. The other being Joe Vidapo. A natural middleweight going up to fight at light heavyweight on short notice to fill in a late replacement, I believe. I can't remember who he was replacing in that fight.
Tom DeBlass.
Tom DeBlass. Okay. And that was an ugly showing. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but it's still about what you'd expect for a middleweight coming in to fight a light heavyweight on short notice.
Didn't Jacoby do pretty decent against King Mo though on the feet to start
He
off?
did. He did all right for a little while. For about a round or so. It ended up being a huge power differential thing where eventually, Mo was landing much much harder shots. Um, and unfortunately, like beyond that, watching Jacoby fight, he's not a bad, he's not a bad fighter, but he's a bit of a inconsistent kickboxer. He's not a technical kickboxer really, but he has some power. He likes to stay, outrange and throw, and he's, um, he's kind of just a decently well-rounded MMA fighter without any one thing that sticks out other than him being a consistent kickboxer. And on the other side of that, okay, what were you gonna say?
A fight or two in glory? I want to say he's a.
Yeah, he has done some kickboxing, but the results in MMA are not. quite that special. Like I don't watch him fight and I'm like, oh, there's a great technical kickboxer, but he has done some kickboxing. I mean, it's it's not like he's a decent striker, but it's not something that I don't watch him strike and I think, oh, there's a natural who's going to knock out everyone he faces that doesn't take him down. And at the same time, John Salter is actually a really decent technical wrestler and grappler. So that's something in this fight that I just don't expect maybe the striking to come into play that much. Salter's a much more determined fighter on the feet, and I think he's got a much better game plan for dealing with somebody like Jacoby. And he's had a rough run. He had a slightly rough run in the UFC just a year into his pro career, but since then he hit a submission hiccup recently. But I think he's a lot better attuned to win this kind of fight.
Didn't Jacoby fight in the UFC as well?
Did I believe he may? Yes, he fought twice, losing to Clifford Starks and Chris Camozzi, also 1 year into his pro career.
Yeah, okay, so he's a Finney's Hit Squad guy, which is Mark Fior taking over after the Matt Hughes Hit Squad thing. That was Matt Hughes, right? I'm just going from my memory on that one.
I think that, yeah, Matt Hughes hit squad. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was.
because that's where shit, I don't remember his name. Kyle. He was on the Ultimate Fighter, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Kyle.
That's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts on the Ultimate Fighter named Kyle. I think there must be like 15 of those by now.
Yeah, actually, you're probably right. I kind of like him though. But either way, I don't think it's a big deal. I like Jacoby's striking, whether or not I consider him pretty technical as far as for the standard in MMA. Um, his whole focus every time he steps into the cage is going to have to be protecting his weaknesses. And I want to say against like Clifford Starks, who was a big boy, pretty good wrestler, that he was really like tooth and nail and did not make anything easy for him. So he's got I would guess if since he's kind of continuing both kickboxing and MMA, I believe that everything to protect that. So his movement, getting off the cage, defensive guard, his get-ups, and all that. Um, and I agree with your take on Salter. And I think Salter. Sorry, I put betting odds in this. I forgot to tell everyone. I always forget the betting odds for Bellator don't come out, at least on bestfightodds.com, which is all we use. They don't come out until like the day before. So we're doing you a bit of a disservice by hosting this show this early in the week. But I would guess Salter is going to be the favorite, deservedly so. But I think I'm going to take Jacoby here. Are you taking Salter? We can maybe make it
I'm
interesting.
taking Salter, and I would say that the one thing I should have gone out and found now that I'm looking closer at Jacoby's record is his fight against Tim Williams, who I would actually say picked to be a pretty good um, port for John Salter's fighting style. Another aggressive wrestler grappler. Williams is a bit more grappling focused than Salter, but Jacoby won that fight, but he won it by doctor stoppage. So that's one of those things where the win, you can't on paper take that much away from that. You can't say like, oh, he obviously does well against that kind of fighter because it's a doctor stoppage. I mean, it could be a cut, it could be it could be something not replicable. Um, but it is that would be an interesting one to go back and look into because that's probably more similar to this kind of fight.
Yeah, and John Salter, when he was back in the UFC, 3 fights. What did we decide? He won one, but that was when Jason McDonald injured
Yeah,
his leg.
TKO to
Um,
injury, and they fought Dan Miller and Gerald Harris and lost by submission and TKO.
and you really can't draw anything from that because I mean those guys are all legit enough where I guess
Well, and he'd been fighting for a year. Like you can't take anything away from a fighter that early in their career. Like that's no time at all. He has zero developed tools.
yeah, and the same can be said with Jacoby. So it's
Yeah.
actually kind of cool now that we're talking through this. I'm kind of excited on this fight now because both of these guys maybe got and I'm okay with it. I think people saw the potential in them, and then just they got to step into the spotlight before. I don't want to say before they were ready. The point is that now we'll be able to see how these guys have evolved and matured. So, yeah, I'll take Jacoby. That'll be kind of interesting, striker versus grappler kind of thing. Um, Any other thoughts on the prelims? The fights we're not talking about are Hector Carrillo versus Everett Cummings, Steve Cazzola versus Jonathan Rivera, Fabian Gonzalez versus Albert Morales, and Luke Bondol. That could be like Bondoli versus Chris Herrera.
Well, I
Anything?
don't know anything about the bottom two, but I would say that between Cumming and there's no tape on Cumming, so there's nothing for me to be able to even say about that other than that he looks like he's a big submission-oriented light heavyweight. But between Cummings, Rivera, and Cazzola, I would expect the that Bellator is probably looking for one fighter to kind of shine and be a bit higher profile, a repeat performer. Especially Rivera looks like he has some real athletic talent. He's a little more striking focused than Cazzola, who's look. They both look like decent up and coming fighters, but Rivera's a bit more singularly focused on striking and a bit more talented there.
Well, and as always in the comments, if we're not giving enough credit anywhere, or there is a fight or a fighter that's worth our discussion, tell us why we're stupid. We will happily review those comments and correct it in the future. All right, moving on to the main card. Welterweights, Fernando Gonzalez versus Marius Zaramskis. This one should be a fun one, yeah?
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, as it may be somewhat of a shock to old school fans, but I'm taking Gonzalez in this one.
Yeah, I am too, without even really having to think about it. I've been
Yeah.
a little it's tough to say disappointed. Zaramskis had one of those runs. I mean, what was that? That was the Dream Welterweight Grand Prix where he like
Yep.
high kicked everybody's head off.
Yep.
Jason High and Sakurai,
And then right afterward fought Myung Ho Bae and head kicked him as
same,
well.
yeah. And I mean, and then people started to, it turned into kind of a phenom thing, and then people started looking up, his old fights and found, tornado kicks, flying, rolling axe kicks, and
Yep.
rightfully so. He's an exciting dude. But I got to say, like his last couple performances, I remember like thinking, man, this is a little bit disappointing. Just really struggled with range. Seems to have like not a good, for a kickboxer with his kind of dynamic arsenal, and he's pretty quick too, and he's real aggressive. It would seem like he would, know how to strike into range, rather than he's kind of putting his head down and winging something, or putting his head down and just like alternating all of his punches until it's just a sloppy way to close the distance. And I actually think Gonzalez is rather adept at controlling distance. Gonzalez is a southpaw, right?
Uh that I'm yeah, maybe I'm not sure. I
I'm pretty sure he is, and just good boxer, tough as
yeah.
shit. A little bit of a deficit in the takedown and grappling departments, but not a novice there, just not an area that he shines. So this is pretty much going to be two strikers, and I think it's not that Zaramskis has a poor chin, but I like Gonzalez's chin. I like his ability to find his opponent's chin, and I think he's just got a very functional, basic boxing game that's
Well,
going to pay major dividends.
well, this is what I would say toward Gonzalez, who's obviously lost a lot more than Zaramskis has never achieved the same heights. Is that Gonzalez strikes me watching him fight like he's the kind of fighter that doesn't quite have the athletic ability to compete at an elite level, but has the toughness and consistency that they don't fall off quite the same way as a lot of really hot athletic talents do. Whereas Zaromskis, I mean, it's sort of like the classic case of a guy who's insanely athletic and who uses athleticism is like key to how he fights. And as his athleticism starts to slow down and starts to go away, as he's not quite as fast as he used to or as agile as he used to be, uh, the fighting style kind of falls apart. Like it just, when a lot of your tools are based off how your ability to throw a somersault kick or a tornado kick or something, like that goes away when you get older. And then what do you have? Like then you have to have a style built around that. Whereas Gonzalez is just consistent high output boxing, and he's got decent takedown defense and everything else. I mean, the big question for him will probably just be conditioning as the fight goes on if he can't keep up with uh, Zaromskis.
I would agree with all that. And Zaramskis kind of seems nowadays to be more show than go. Everyone
Yeah.
loves the show. I do myself, but you got to have just the functional tools in order to win a fight, like jab, jab, a hook, where your lead foot is as far as when you're penetrating into range, and he seems to struggle with that. Although I can remember now these last couple of fights that I was saying that towards the end he was able to turn it around, whether he buzzed the guy or he was able to find a rhythm and pick it up a little bit. Gonzalez is the opposite. Like there's no show, there's nothing flashy about him. It's just like basic functional, tools with his hands. Also, for whatever it's worth, I know that Gonzalez early in his career fought way up, like I want to say heavyweight 205 and 185,
Yeah, it
and
wouldn't surprise me at all.
I think I want to say he told me it was because that was just where they needed him for the weight class, and I know that he really wasn't that dedicated back then, so he's had a little bit of like a career rejuvenation, and that really consummated with the win over Carl because there was all kinds of bad blood there. So I think he's got a pretty steep cut to make 170, which also kind of feeds into your cardio thing. I don't want to say it's a big weakness, but it's just a question mark. Zaramskis doesn't necessarily shine there, but he definitely doesn't just fall off the map after 3 rounds unless he's
Yeah, and
taking a beating.
Romskis is also a notably small welterweight. Like, I would be surprised if he cut much weight at all.
That's what I thought, but then I thought Gonzalez was going to tower over him, and beforehand I checked, and they're both the same height at
Yeah.
least, which kind of surprised me a little bit. But I do think that Gonzalez fights longer and taller, and Zaramskis actually fights smaller
Well,
compared to
and
his
when
proportions.
Zaromskis, when you've been fighting at one weight as long as you have, at a short height for that weight, then, you develop the body that works for that. When for somebody like Gonzalez who's been fighting up at higher weights and all of that, I mean, he's not going to have developed the same comfort fighting in the weight class, even if technically you put him and Zaromskis side by side and they're the same size.
Tough fight for Zaramskis, although I have to admit, even though we're both strongly leaning towards Gonzalez, Zaramskis still has skills. He's still an explosive striker, and he's got the kind of style that will lend itself to not just knockouts, but highlight reel knockouts. So, not the kind of guy you can con out easily. Moving on to the next one, Houston Alexander versus Virgil Zwicker. Again, weird. I like both of these guys actually. I mean, from a human standpoint, these guys are awesome. I mean, these are the hardcore guys that are in the trenches and like fighting because they love it and fighting to like feed their families. So like quality individuals. That being said, I'm not sure why they're doing this one again. I remember in the first one there was some kind of what was the controversy? Was it a headbutt? Was it Houston Alexander and a headbutt? I want to say one was pretty blatant.
Um, God, I can't. I'm trying to remember now. Let me
Look up my
see.
live blog because I did live play-by-play for it, and I think there was like I want to say it was a headbutt. One was questionable, and then all of a sudden there was one fight, and it
Let's
was Houston
see.
Alexander, and I want to say it was kind of a blatant, and I want to say
Yeah, here we
headbutt from the
are.
top.
Let's
Oh,
see.
that's why they're doing it
Shooting
again
back
because
smashes body lock. Point is deducted from Alexander, and okay. Uh, and lots of a blatant headbutt on Alexander landed a blatant headbutt on Zwicker from top control. I remember that. Yeah, he
yep.
was like on top of him and just headbutted him.
And Zwicker was kind of complaining, I want to say, before that, and it was nothing but like, "Hey, watch him, he's leading with his head." And then they were kind of bickering back and forth, and then like
Yeah.
Alexander, left all curiosity and question out of it, and like top, like when you're on top, you can't. I think it was Houston was really pushing his forehead down, which is it's okay. We see that all
Yeah.
the time, but it was a little borderline where he was almost striking with the head, and like finally he just raised his head up in Mark Coleman style
Yeah.
and headbutted him. And I
Yeah.
think that ended up resulting in some weird scores because a point was docked. So maybe Bellator thinks, hey, we didn't really get to see the real outcome there.
The fight that everybody wanted.
Yeah, and I think the first time around, like I was into this, but I think it was a hard sell to the casual fans. And now
Yeah.
I think it's even harder unless they're so casual they're unaware of the first one.
Yeah, I mean, I got to think it's a weight thing because otherwise I'd much rather see Fabricio Guerrero even against Nick Piedmont than I would see this. I mean, like I'd fine with them redoing this card or fight, but it should be like the last fight or the first, like the prelim headliner would be fine.
And now I remember Houston Alexander was supposed to go up to heavyweight and fight James Thompson. And Thompson pulled out, and that's why Zwicker came in.
Oh, and now
So
Thompson's fighting King Mo, it sounds like. Which,
really,
yeah, because Thompson was scheduled to fight
yeah, on
was
that all Britain or all that all UK card,
Lashley, was it?
I think it was because he's the only heavyweight, and I know Lashley was on the card.
Yeah, it was he was supposed to fight Lashley, but oh wait, no. I might be getting this
I'm pretty sure he was
uh,
going to fight Lashley because, barring James Thompson, the three other UKers are bad motherfuckers. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
Sentex,
He
Linton
was supposed to
Vassell.
fight Lashley, and now King Mo is potentially going to has been tabbed to potentially step in.
That actually, I don't mind. Like, if Coker's gonna, if a guy pulls out having one of their marquee names move up in weight, I actually like that. To me, that makes it a little bit more appealing. A lot of people immediately think, "Oh, freak show," and they get all pissy about it. But I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and the chances that King Mo loses a fight to James Thompson are like almost zero.
Right? It's a great matchup for him. And actually, I think Houston Alexander would have matched up pretty good with Thompson. There's certain matchups, but that one, Alexander's, being so much smaller, his striking speed to me would have been insurmountable for a big guy like Thompson. But either way, I don't even know where the hell we got off from. Alexander Zwicker, um, yeah. So I don't know if lend a prediction on this. I want to say the difference. This was probably billed, or most people thought, because these guys are both stand-up guys, as just that, a stand and bang. But Alexander ended up tilting things in his favor by going for takedowns, which kind of made the
Yeah.
fight not as exciting as people thought. But it was a wise strategy. I do think it worked for him.
I guess if I have a prediction, it's this one's gonna kind of suck too. Like may, maybe Alexander will win it because he's generally been a better fighter than Virgil Zwicker, but um, I don't know. Like it's just I honestly think that Zwicker probably has more to offer. But his training, like I don't know, he just doesn't. He seems to fade really heavily in fights. Like so does Alexander, but Zwicker to the point that you're just like, is this like healthy? Should we, I don't know. Like this just has ugly brawl written all over it, and the fact that Alexander was on his way to winning the last one, I can't look at that and be like, oh, but who knows what could happen this time? It's just gonna be ugly, and I don't know.
Well, I hate to say it, but if it was an ugly brawl, like if they were going to stand up and let him fly, that's one thing. But to me, when Houston started to go for takedowns, it's what we always suggest fighters
Yeah,
do. It did just that. I mean, it made both guys a little hesitant. So then instead of like standing and planning and really, throwing their hands, they were kind of cautiously throwing, which is what you need to do in the threat of a takedown. But so either way, I don't know who you're picking on this one. I'll take Houston here. Are you taking Zwicker?
no, I'm taking Houston. He won the last one, so I'm not gonna not pick him to win this one. That fight just happened, and it wasn't like it wasn't a fluke win. He got the draw because he fouled him, but he was on his way to winning that fight.
So was the final result a draw?
Yeah, the final result was a draw, and
So
it
everyone,
was
all right, yeah, everyone scored it 2-1 for Houston with the point
yeah,
deduction, made it a
yep.
draw. I'm
So
tempted to go with my man Virgil here. I'll go with Virgil. It's not
go
like
with
we're gonna.
Virgil. There's zero reason
I
not to like.
was gonna say, it's not like we're gonna develop some heated, rivalry based on this one pick. So, all right, we'll split on that
Yeah.
one. Next one, kind of definitely a prospect, a chance to be a showcase fight for a prospect. Bubba Jenkins, phenomenal wrestler. He was a D1 champion, correct?
Yeah.
College. Versus Georgie Karakanyan. I was kind of shocked that his record is as good as it is, but yet he's always flown under the radar screen, Georgie.
Yeah, I mean that's he didn't do great in Bellator. He didn't do bad, but he didn't do great there when he was there, and that's kind of the biggest stage he's hit with any consistency, and that kind of kept him off everyone's radar.
What are you doing to your dog, Zane?
Oh, she wants to play. She's getting all antsy, needs to go run around, so she's whining at me.
She's given us the half-hour warning alarm on,
But
on the Vivisection.
yeah,
I actually think this is a great matchup because Karakanyan's tough as shit, and I mean, started out I believe as a judoka. Was he at Hayastan under Gokor back in the day?
Um,
I want to say he was, but
yeah,
I
I
believe he
kind of
was.
feel like he was. Uh, I feel like he was part of that whole Manny Gamburian
Yeah,
crowd.
but
Um,
Georgie is a guy that all fighters you talk to speak with, they all speak about him with the utmost respect. I mean, good dude, hard worker, really talented. I mean, he has almost no weaknesses, and he's really battle hardened too. He's fought some big names and done really, really well. I think this is a great test for Jenkins, who, when he first came out, he did not light the world on fire like a lot of D1 champs we expect them to. And in his defense, I was saying just that. Hey, every guy needs some time to warm up to MMA. Um, but still, I wasn't quite high on him. But then in his last fight, for sure, in his last couple, he's really looked to improve dramatically. Like in his last three, I want to say he's improved more so than he has throughout his whole MMA career thus far.
yeah, I mean he's just coming up on 3 years as a pro, so there's no, we're still probably 3 years from seeing Bubba Jenkins as a complete MMA fighter. Um, and the question then is like we are at the complete version of Karakanyan. Like he's been fighting for 8 years, and he's a complete fighter. He's a good, competent Muay Thai striker. He wrestles with decent fundamentals. He grapples with fundamentals, and in general, other than his loss to Joe Warren back in 2010, the guys that have been able to beat him tend to be guys that can outstrike him. Now, he does have, he has a good submission game, but he can, I think, be a little overly reliant on his submissions for defending takedowns. But I'm not quite sure if Jenkins is at the point in his progression where he's so adept at defending submissions that he can't put himself in danger there.
And I think that's what this whole fight hinges on, really, right? Jenkins' ability to submit. I mean, I think Karakhanyan is a
Yeah,
better striker. Actually, at this
yeah,
point, I think Karakhanyan is better everywhere except
yeah,
for straight up wrestling, and no
yeah.
one in the weight class is going to be better than Bubba Jenkins. The thing that about Georgie that really stands out is everything he does is MMA tailored. So it's
Yeah.
not like he has good, individual backgrounds in, Muay Thai, whatever, boxing, wrestling, judo. He's been competing long enough that his shit is functional. He knows
Hmm.
how to do it all in the cage without a gi, without judo grips, whatever. So we're both going to pick Georgie here, right? For the
Yeah, I mean, unless Jenkins is now suddenly on the extreme blue chip sort of John Jones progress scale, which he hasn't shown himself to be to this point. He doesn't. He's gotten a lot better, but he doesn't look like Chris Weidman out there, in terms of progression. Like he's not that sort of complete breaking the mold as a prospect fighter. He's a good fighter, a good wrestler, or a great wrestler becoming a good fighter. But so unless he's on that track, it's really hard to see how he's going to beat Karakanyan because he's not going to be able to strike with him. He, I don't think he's going to be able to grapple with him. So it's purely a case of can he get him down and hold him down for round
which
after round.
is not is it's the worst way to win. I don't know why I kind of hesitated, but his best strategy is the kind of fight that fans want to see the least. Because I
Yeah.
agree, his best strategy to win this is get a takedown, don't get submitted. Which results in a highly defensive top game. Uh, Hell, maybe we're all wrong though. Jenkins' striking has come along. I think he's just game enough and athletic enough that his striking could be a factor. He's the kind of dude he's been competing for so long. He knows how
Yeah.
to time a big ass right hand. And
Hmm.
anyone, Karakanyan's tough as shit. He's got a great chin. But again, I was gonna say I think we're both going for the underdog. I'm assuming Karakanyan's going to be the underdog here, and Jenkins is the favorite. I'm actually okay with that, but I'm going to go with Georgie.
I couldn't. That would seem kind of ridiculous to me, honestly. I mean, you're talking about off wins over Poppies Martinez and Tiago Meller. That Bubba Jenkins should be a favorite to beat Georgie Karkanian, who, just because Karkanian lost to Rick Glenn, I don't. I hope that's not the case, but it could be because Jenkins may have a bit more name value at this point. Because I mean, obviously, favorites is all about who the betting public's going to pick, not who bettors think is going to win.
Yeah, I
So
want to say we see that often when you went through that whole scenario. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Jenkins was the favorite in this one,
yeah,
especially because Karakanyan's coming off a loss. People, for some reason, aren't real familiar with him. It's weird. That's like worth an article, like how a guy like that has been under the radar for so long. It's not like he's a world beater. He should be top five or whatever. But damn, he should not be overlooked, whatsoever. He's real
yeah,
legit, got a lot of experience to prove it. So, all right, so we're both taking Georgie in that one.
yep.
Finish, sub.
Uh, I would pick him by knockout. I think that at some point it's more. I feel like it's most likely that Jenkins is going to end up getting wary of staying on the ground and going to get caught waiting on the outside.
I'll say submission or positional stoppage, and that'll be another thing. Like Karakanyan's, real crafty with sweeps and escapes and that kind of thing. So actually, it's another one now that we've talked it through. I'm looking forward to that one as well. On to the main event. I mean, this one I can't see how this could possibly be boring. Patricio Freire versus Daniel Straus. Um, Straus, I always mess this up, but he was in high school, like on track to be, a solid wrestler, like one of the best. I'm tempted to say in the country, but something happened. I don't remember, it was injury or whatever, but he got derailed, went into MMA, and now I think recently he just everything seems to be coming together for him. He was a little lay and pray heavy, wrestling heavy, which is totally normal coming into his career. He lost to Pat Curran early at XFO, then just turned into a madman, reeled off I don't know, a shitload of wins, all the way propelling him up to his Bellator stint. Um, and then he had that whole thing with Curran before. What was that whole deal? How many times has he fought Curran? Two or three?
I think th- three now. He's
Yeah, I want to
fought
say
three.
lost,
Yeah,
came back, beat him in Bellator, then came back and
lost.
lost via rear naked choke.
Yep.
And actually, these two, I want to say, it didn't Strauss. It's good we like to do our research live on the show while everyone's watching and waiting. Strauss has a win over Frere, right?
He has a loss to him.
Was it a
Same
decision
thing.
loss?
Yep.
Ooh, okay. Either way, though, this will be a banger. Both of these guys aggressive as hell. They throw a lot of leather and they throw it hard. I think the two obvious points are wrestling advantage, although not by much, because both the Freire brothers have proved to have pretty solid wrestling, despite or in light of having a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. But slight edge, will say, to Strauss in wrestling, same or greater advantage to Freire with submission grappling. You agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't say that. I guess I wouldn't say that Freire's advantage in submission grappling is to the point that I expect him to submit Daniel Straus, but he's
No.
got the edge.
It, yeah, man, it's depressing actually, because whether or not you have an advantage in submission grappling kind of doesn't matter anymore, because if you do have it, you'll use it to avoid that position altogether, right? That's kind of what the times are forcing cats to
Well,
do nowadays.
it depends on the advantage you have. I mean, if you're just generally a better grappler, that may be the case. But you're also seeing guys who, like Marcin Held or like Michael Chiesa or some of the Novu now guys who all go to the arm triangle over and over again. Guys who have a set submission or set position that they like and they're really dominant in, and they just find a whole bunch of different ways to get to that one thing. That
The
I mean, that's
go-to.
kind of become the evolution of grappling in MMA. Maybe not so much the guys aren't doing it, but that the guys who are doing it really successfully aren't like holding a fighter down and working and like really just sort of out grappling them and eventually chaining submissions together, but are saying, okay, I'm going to go for the head, the arm triangle, and if I don't get it this way, then the next time I'm going to go after it like this, and just going for things that they can get quickly and then getting back to their feet.
And a lot of those moves are safe moves too. You know, you
Yeah,
can go for an arm triangle and not really sacrifice position or put yourself
yeah,
in all kinds of danger for it. And most of what I was saying was usually, intended like for the guard player. Like if you have a
yeah,
better guard game,
yeah. If you have
or
the better guard game.
if you're a better grappler and you have a better guard, but you're on your back, generally nowadays you're going to lose unless you sweep, submit, or escape, which is, I don't know, kind of a pisser. But on to
Well,
this
it's less
fight.
that way than it used to be.
What was
Less
that?
It's less that way than it used to be. It used to be that you would lose no matter what. I mean, kind of classic MMA was takedowns are king, top position is king.
Yeah, I think what the thing that I'm noticing now is now the fighters are accepting it. They're thinking there's no fucking sense in me whatsoever to be on the ground. So we're really almost seeing guard play
Yeah,
used as nothing more than, an escape route, kind of a pisser. Either way,
yeah,
don't get.
that's true.
I'm kind of feel. First of all, I like both of these guys. I think this is an example of these two guys would. People will shit themselves if I go too far. These guys could easily hang in the UFC. I mean, as soon as you say that, people start comparing them to the Aldos, and that's not fair because go look at the UFC roster for featherweights, and there's going to be a couple guys you probably haven't even heard of and don't know too much about. And I'm saying like the up and comers that the UFC is snagging, these guys would eat them for lunch. I think both of these guys are
Well,
super legit.
sure. I mean, Darren Elkins is a top 15 featherweight. The old guard of featherweight in the UFC, they're ranked like the guys that are still at the top and ranked. There's a ton of up and coming talent in that division, but the top is still a little thin. Like there's still a few guys where you're like, yeah, top flight talent, not quite maybe.
Like Dennis Bermudez is a guy who deserves, I think, to be in that conversation, but even he's just now kind of breaking into the
Yeah,
top 10.
he's one of the sort of the fighters on the rise that featherweight has a lot of.
Yep. Other guys like Poirier and that type because of their length, tough matchup. But these guys, I believe, would be right in the mix with all the other boys. I'm kind of leaning Straus in this matchup. I don't know what your thoughts are, but he's pretty long. I think he's got a couple inches on Pitbull as well. For as much as I love, Patricio and both the Pitbull brothers, you kind of know what to expect, and they're excellent at it. I mean, they're excellent in fighters. Their boxing in the pocket is, I mean, top tier. But I think that it's a little too predictable. You know what to expect. He has to be in the phone booth to do some work. His footwork and his entries, I think, is the reason why he's been able to make what he does so much more effective. But I think Straus, now that his boxing has come along so well, his length, then you throw his wrestling in there. I think that's going to be enough to get him the win here.
Well, I'm kind of battling with two trains of thought here. One is exactly what you say, and part of that too is that Strauss is a young fighter who is just hitting his prime. Like, we should now be starting to see the best version of Daniel Strauss. He's already had his first taste at the top of the Bellator division, and while he won the first time, he came up short then. But now we're starting to see like this should be the prime years of his career. This is when he should be at his best. And quite frankly, with Freire, we should even though he's only 27, we should kind of be past that. He's been fighting since 2004. He's been in the game for coming up on 11 years now. That's a long time. But the thing is, and the thing that's giving me pause is that right now it also appears that Freire has made some adjustments and is actually looking better than ever. And there's a chance that he could be on that kind of rare track that you see some fighters get on where they do and are able to improve continuously. I don't know that his style quite supports that. Usually, fighters like that, your kind of Anderson Silva's, Lyoto Machida's, guys like that are guys that continue or that don't get hit a lot and are real elusive and are really good at not taking damage. Freire really gets right in the pocket and tends to scrap, and that's kind of the antithesis to that. So, but I mean, he looks great lately. I don't know. I think at heart, the big thing that I come down to is that Freire probably is not in the UFC. The biggest thing Freire would probably be that would not be a real featherweight. He'd be a bantamweight. and the eventual size at the top of the division would force him down. And I think Straus is more your prototypical bantamweight right now, and he's a prototypical bantamweight in his prime. He's pretty big, pretty lengthy, rangy fighter. Is very aggressive, is a strong wrestler,
Did
and
you did you mean featherweight for
or
Strauss?
featherweight. Yeah, Straus, prototypical featherweight. And I see this. I see him winning this fight, but it's tough. It's a tough pick.
Yeah, when I say Strauss, I'm this this is almost a coin flip, and I think when it's a coin flip, you have to go on tangible advantages. To your conversation, I would say Pitbull is in his prime right now. Doesn't mean he can't improve any further, but I mean I think he's I don't want to say he's peaked, but he's at the top of his game right now, and Strauss is getting there, could be there, but I wouldn't say he's absolutely there yet. So from
Well,
that,
when I say a fighter's entered their prime, I don't mean peaked. I mean they're at the point where everything should be clicking.
I got you.
Everything should really be working together. You can still improve in that and adjust things, but it's that point where suddenly you'll see a guy come out and they'll look like all the parts just work suddenly. All the things that they've been doing and that they were maybe good at and that maybe were things they were developing suddenly all click into one complete style that functions.
I'd say Pitbull's there. Strauss is just getting there.
Yeah, I mean that should be the point that Straus is getting to, and that should be the point that Pitbull's been at for a while. But
Yep.
he appears to have come. Pitbull appears to have come at it late. So that's the thing that's giving me pause. Is it's hard to get a bead on just where Pitbull is in his career because he has fought for long enough that he should, he's an old dog in this hunt, and it's, but he fights, he's fighting better than ever. So it's really hard to say.
Let's see. You could argue he's been there, but circumstances have kind of prevented it. So, and the two being his only two losses. Pat Curran and Joe Warren. Many feel he should have won the Joe Warren fight. Yeah, the Pat Curran fight. Mm, it was not a robbery by any means.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking like skill wise, not like public wise, public perception.
Well, I guess that's kind of, and I see what you're saying, and it's all obviously hypothetical. But if he wouldn't have lost, at least the current fight, he would have been the champ, and then I
Yeah,
guess we would know for sure because he would have been fighting the cream of the crop. But I guess I don't know. We're mired in speculation right now. Your pick for this one?
I'm taking Strauss, but I'm not doing so happily.
Well, I'll take Strauss, and I'll do it semi happily. I think it's going to be a good fight. I don't
Yeah,
think
it'll
you
be a
can
great
rule out.
fight. I mean, that's none of this is to say it's not a great fight. It's just to say that I think it's an incredibly hard fight to get an accurate beat on right now, even with Freire having beaten Strauss once already.
Yeah, and in fights like this, it's it's hard to tell what's gonna go on. I mean, to me, it's a matter of how much. If Strauss does nothing but stands up with Pitbull, I would give it to Pitbull because I think his rhythm and his timing,
Yeah,
even despite being shorter and not having the reach, he wins that. But I
yeah,
think it's how well Strauss mixes in his a little bit his length and distance, but mostly his takedowns because that one takedown will take, like we've been talking about, take all the venom out of your stand up. So Freire has been excellent using just violence, as really his takedown defense. I mean, he'll pop you a couple times coming close, and this is a guy who can do serious damage with like 6, 7 inch punches. So he doesn't need a lot, and he's fast, and he's just wily as hell. So I do think that Strauss's distance, he's got that. He's really throwing that nice long left cross now as a southpaw. That mixed in with his wrestling, I think really it's just more tools for him on the table. Whereas, Pitbull's going to have scrappiness, feisty takedown defense, and striking. Am I right there? I mean, it just seems like
yeah,
Strauss has got more options.
yeah. It's true, but I mean, it's also I don't know. It's tough because I mean, you could argue that that has basically been what Robbie Lawler does, and like that kind of skill set can win you even the best fights depending on how good you are at it. And
A
I think
solid correlation. Lawler and Pitbull.
the big question would be for me. I mean, like, what lost Curran the fight to Pitbull seemed to be that Curran has trouble staying consistent as a high output offensive fighter.
Yeah, he went away.
Yeah, he has these big lulls, and I don't think Straus does that. Straus tends to be much more consistent in pressing the fight, in staying aggressive, in either working his wrestling or his striking and keeping either one going. Um, and if he does that against Freire, I think he can be successful and win.
There's wasn't the when he got tapped out by Kern in the third one, wasn't that somewhat negative? I want to say, like, he didn't fight off the choke. He didn't fight his way out. He kind of,
Yeah, I think he tired, flagged, and Curran, Curran's a great opportunist. If he sees the opportunity to beat you, he'll take it. And Straus gave him the opportunity, and Curran took it.
from like a fortitude standpoint, that's all Pitbull to me. He's just one of the like most hard nosed, tough as nails guys around.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
that would be another advantage I'd throw on the table. So, all right, let's wrap this sumbitch up. Anything else you want to say?
No, I think that's the important thing. Really, this is a card that hinges on having a really quality coupled fights at the top.
Yeah, and I'm a lot more excited about it now that we talked our way through it, actually. So hopefully the viewers are too. On Twitter, he is at the Zane Simon. I'm at Uncle Justice. Subscribe to MMA Nation and or give us a like. Zane, how do they do that? How do they give us a like?
The thumbs up, that'd be the thumbs up right below the video. So like, down, thumbs up.
I'm,
That's
I
the
don't
whole.
I don't
You
like
know.
the pumping action you're doing with your thumb when the. Never mind.
Yeah,
We're keeping it professional here.
yeah. Let's nip that train of thought in the bud.
All right, I know how to do that. We're going to end the broadcast, but we will be back for the UFC Vivisection tomorrow. Is that tomorrow?
I believe that's tomorrow, yes. And I will be back for a World Series of Fighting Vivisection tomorrow afternoon as well. So we will have a full cordon of MMA videos.
According, y'all. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.